feel that we've had a very productive off-season to date. I think Coach Zimmer has done an outstanding job putting together a staff, especially on the offensive side where we had some changes to promote Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator, to bring in the experience of Gary Kubiak, Rick Dennison, and the rest of the new coaches that came in to hire Moof, the new special teams coach. Very excited about the direction of this staff. Also, this is a time of year everybody's down here to improve their football team. And I know from a general manager standpoint, this is the most exciting time of the year to get things that you need to get done to help improve your roster, and that's with free agency coming up, with the draft coming up. Our ownership group, the Wolf family, has never said no to letting us go out and get the best available talent possible for this roster. And as we went through our meetings over the last month, not only with our scouts, with our coaches, with our ownership, we'll try to be as aggressive as we can to continue to improve this roster. I know last season was a disappointing season, but I know how we've started so far and the direction we're headed. Very excited about getting back on track for next season. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
With the new coaching and the running game coordinator, are you sticking with the same zone blocking scheme, or are you looking to?
I think they're doing that right now. I know Coach Zim's been sitting in every offensive meeting, as many as he can. I know Kevin Stefanski is in charge of that room, but to have that experience, I think it goes hand in hand when you're putting a scheme together. Look at the current personnel that you do have. Do those players fit in the scheme you're going to run? And as we start making additions to this roster, what physical traits or what are you going to require that player to do to be effective in this scheme? And I think what gets lost in the shuffle a little bit is a player, let's take offensive line for example. A player may be very functional in a gap scheme where he's going straight ahead and moving people forward. But if we, and I'm not going to talk, I mean, Coach Zimmer, you can ask him about the scheme, but if we're evolving to an outside zone scheme or different, well, that's going to be a different type of skill set or physical trait we're going to be looking at in the offensive line. But I think it goes hand in hand, us understanding the scheme, what's required of the players, but also I think the coaches do a great job if we're not able to fill everything with the current players that we do have on the roster. How can we adjust the scheme to hopefully put them in the best situation to have success?
Hey Rick, I was curious about the mental health of NFL players. You guys had a situation last year, not talking specifically about that, but just in general, what do you guys do, or how have your processes changed to help players both preemptively and after incidents?
I think it's something that's going to come to the forefront, especially as an NFL. I know we specifically dealt with a situation. I felt we had everything in place to help our specific player get through it, and he was able to come back on the field and play for us. But I think what general managers maybe had to deal with 10 years ago is a lot different than what we have to deal with today. And it's not only mental health, it's the social justice, it's social media. So there are a lot of things, and I think the more that we're able to educate ourselves, the better we'll be able to handle, just in general, situations that do pop up that maybe we didn't have to deal with 10 years ago. How
do you educate yourself, your staff, whoever else about some of those problems?
Well, we've talked about it on a couple of the committees that I'm on. And I know it's a big on the forefront of the NFL, and I don't want to speak for Troy Vincent, but coming up with different ways and ideas that when we do get together as a league, are there things that can help educate us? But I think it's also an onus on the team to reach out and to make sure that you're educated on those specific areas as well, and go out and talk to the experts. Best way I learn is when you experience things or you go through something. What did you do good? What did you do bad? How can you improve? And talk to the people who are experts in those specific areas on, do we have all the right everything in place, or could we even improve more from what we currently have? And when you sit back, you're not only evaluating, your roster and your team, but you're also evaluating everything else on the football operations side. And I was, in a meeting with our ownership this off season, and we spent, a 10-hour day not only going through the stuff that happens on the field, but also are we prepared and are we educated enough, and do we have all the right people and all the right experts in place from our organization to handle situations that you may not anticipate but do come up. And I feel there's no question our ownership is going to give us all the resources necessary to make sure that we have those pieces in place.
Rick, having gone through the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes last year, what did you learn about recruiting, attracting, luring free agents?
Well, I didn't learn anything until we were able to actually talk to him after, the gun, or I shouldn't say the gun, again, the start of free agency began. But it's the one thing I know for us, and which was a huge advantage for us, was I do think we have an excellent coaching staff. We have some good players on our football team, and we're a very good football team. But also, when they walked into that building, the ownership built for us. Our new practice facility, the TCO Performance Center, U.S. Bank Stadium, to go play in that facility. I think that was a huge advantage for us once we got the players into that building, even when we brought Sheldon Richardson through. But it's always going to come down to, do you have a good football team? Do they believe in the coaches you have? But having all that is a huge benefit.
When you evaluate a young quarterback, what elements are, just either they have it or they don't? Are there some things that just can't be taught in your mind about it?
I think as this sports science evolves, I think as we get more and more sophisticated in the psychological aspect of everything, because quarterbacks are maybe different than any other position. There could be guys that physically can throw the ball better than anyone in this draft, could run faster than anyone in this draft. But I don't know if those are the critical factors. They are. But you see a lot of quarterbacks that may not have been physically at the top of the list when they came out of here, but because of what's in their mind, what's in their heart, how they approach it, makes a huge difference at that position. And I think that's what everybody's trying to put an answer on. And those are a lot of times subjective things you're trying to get, to an objective decision.
Rick, you brought on Gary Kubiak as a coach. What will his role be, and what do you like as his experience coming from the Denver Broncos to bring to your team?
Yeah, the one thing is not only has he been a head coach and won Super Bowls, but the scheme he comes from. And coming from, Kubiak, Shanahan, that type of scheme, and when he decided to get back into coaching, we were very aggressive to jump on that opportunity. I think he had maybe other options out there, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think the way he feels, with the quarterback we have in place and the quarterback playing in the scheme that we're probably going to evolve to highlight what Kirk does best, was one of the attractions. But he also, I know in his career right now, and he's mentioned this, was to mentor a young coach like a Kevin Stefanski, who I think is going to be an all-star in this league, and to take that experience. And what's unique about Kevin is that he has no ego. And when we brought up the fact that a guy of Gary Kubiak's stature could come into our building, he was the one that was the biggest flag waver for Gary Kubiak. He wants that. And that's what makes, I think, our building a little unique. No one really has an ego. Everybody, whatever resources we can use, whatever areas of expertise we have all these people in, let's all do it together, because ultimately we want to win. And when you can get a group of people together in a culture, and that starts with Coach Zimmer, the culture that we have set, that gives you the best chance to win, in my opinion.
How do you balance his health and coach and being with his health, he's had problems with the health, and with his being around the organization.
I don't
How do you
think.
balance that?
Yeah, Coach Kubiak would have jumped back in it. I don't think if he felt he was healthy. I know, especially with the tragedy we had to deal with last year, and this comes from our ownership. You know, we have all our, because we're fortunate to be in a part of the country we are in. You know, we have all our coaches go to a specific hospital to make sure that they get a thorough physical. But that's just another show of what our ownership is going to do to make sure that we're, you know, one of the best organizations in the NFL.
What are some of the challenges with rookie wide receivers coming into the league, and how does that factor into decisions as you look at drafting a guy in the early rounds?
You have to look at, again, the physical ability, but a lot of times these guys are coming in playing basketball on grass. They never get in a huddle. All what they're going to do, which I'm trying to tell my son right now down in Nebraska, you can't just go out there and run around and just beat the guy because you're physically gifted. Technically, who's going to be covering you every week at this level, you're going to have to learn the technique. These guys, when you watch them, how many times you watch an NFL receiver and you see the distance between the DB and him at times and how open they are. Well, you're not going to be that open at this level. So I think they have to adjust to all the, you know, just like a quarterback does, how tight the windows are, the technical part, because you may not have got jammed. I mean, I've looked at a lot of receivers that never have really had to sit there and face it, you know, a top corner that's going to jam you off the line of scrimmage. That's all new. So I think that's part of the process. They have to have the physical ability, but they also have to learn the technical part of the game, which is a big jump for some.
Time for two more for Rick.
Do you think it'll be easier for wide receivers in the future, rookie-wise, if, you know, the NFL is incorporating some of the college concepts, if it becomes more like basketball on grass?
Well, I think you're starting to see some of that evolve a little bit just on some of what the offenses are doing right now. But I know there's a lot of smart coaches on defense. They're going to. I remember when I first started back in the 80s when, you know, the run and shoot was in vogue with Houston Cougars running it. Okay, then all of a sudden it started to get, but defenses figured out how to stop that real quick. So I think it's always evolving. But there are some things that you're starting to see now that trickle into our game a little bit.
With regards to Kirk Cousins, what's the one thing from an organizational standpoint you guys can do to help him take his game up another level, and what's going to be the one thing that he needs to do to go up a little bit?
You know, I think, you know, Kirk's, because of the position and the contract, is going to get a lot of blame, but the blame has to be spread throughout. You know, our season was good enough for our standards last year. But statistically, if you look at what Kirk did, I mean, he threw for over 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, but we didn't win enough games. So I think going back to an offense that he is very familiar with and working under that Shanahan-Kubiak tree, and really him playing better, but everybody has to play better. We all have to do better at our jobs. But him highlighting the things that he does well and but that's any player, do the things that they do well, and that's what I talked about earlier, is you have your schemes, but adjust some of the things you scheme so you put your players in the best position to have success.
All right.